Okay. So I'm going to start with some introductions. I'm obviously Sorrel Pinder. I'm a relationship coach, and I have a special interest in people who've experienced abandonment or separation trauma as children. I've got 2 degrees in psychology, which I always forget to mention. One of which is an MPhil in developmental psychology, so concerned about how children and adolescents and adults develop. And before I started my family, I worked for a London council doing crime prevention and civil liberties work. So this is a bit of a different thing for me. I then went on and retrained, became an osteopath after I'd had my children. And I spent 15 of those years as an osteopath working with ME patients. So I came to know quite a lot about chronic fatigue syndrome and then long COVID. And one of the things I noticed was a lot of my patients had some childhood trauma. Then in 2016, I started my coach training, first of all with neurolinguistic programming. And then I went on to train as a clarity coach with Jamie Smart, whose practice is founded in the 3 principles, which is basically the notion that everything is from the inside out, that our feelings are not caused by stuff outside of us, but that we create everything from the inside out. And then I kind of finished my coach training by becoming a certified one of many women's coach, which is a training for coaching women. And I have a really dysfunctional relationship history, I'm proud to admit, which reflects trauma of having been sent to boarding school at the age of 11. And it stopped being dysfunctional when I met my current partner. And although like the years of counselling that I had to deal with the boarding school trauma and other trauma helped a bit, the big thing for me was the 3 principles and the coach training and being coached. And then meeting my partner and becoming aware of the notion of relational mindfulness and the importance of safety. So I became present to my own destructive patterns, and that enabled me to heal in a much bigger way than I had before. So anyway, so that's me. And I'd love to introduce to you Sharon Baker, who is a transformational coach. She works with ambitious, driven, intelligent women who are looking for more meaning in their lives. It's a journey she made herself from a career working in the media for big brands to being an artist. And if anybody clicked the link, she cast herself in bread. Was that in 2014?
Oh, ongoing, actually. I can't remember the last time I did it. I've done it quite a few times now.
Anyway, it's a brilliant idea. I love it. And then so finally 2014, after a lot of heart searching, you qualified as a coach. Sharon's worked with creative agencies as a leadership coach and with many high profile women to help them find their real selves and to live this knowing. With 3 degrees to her name, a business background, her art, and a keen meditation practice, Sharon brings an eclectic mix of skills to her coaching alongside her witchy sense that helps her articulate exactly what clients are thinking. She has a degree in psychology and fine art and is a conceptual artist known for Eat Me. So this mix of experience enables her to see outside the box, and she's inspired by delivering lasting change for her clients. So Sharon, thank you so much for being here.
It's a pleasure. Thank you very much for a little bit of it always sounds like, it sounds okay when it's sort of out there, isn't it? But yeah, no, I love what I do, and I found my place. I think that's probably the summation of all that. I found my place. Well, one of different places. It could have been many places, but this place feels so right and solid and grounded and wonderful for me.
Okay. So shall we? We have talked a lot in the social media posting about this, about presence and owning your shit, haven't we? But what we were going to do is start by looking at what the challenges are in relationships. So Sharon, why is it so difficult for us as people, as humans, to say what we want and to be truthful in our relationships?
Yeah, well, I think so. Just before we start, I just want to be really transparent here and say I'm not in an intimate relationship, in terms of a partner. But what I look at, and I've helped a lot of clients with their intimate relationships, but it's also about relating. It's about, how we relate to everyone in our lives, our sort of our family, our work colleagues, our friends. It's about this relation. And I think there are a few things. It's about the challenges are when we are showing ourselves, when we're showing ourselves as who we are. And very often that if we haven't got to a place of sort of acceptance within ourselves, which, you know, and who of us have really, we build a picture of this identity of ourselves, of who we are. And because we have that identity, we want to protect it. We want to defend it. And whenever I think, especially in intimate relationships, I think intimate relationships is a fantastic place to actually really see some of your true shit coming up and then be able to deal with it, because it is a place that we feel very vulnerable. You know, we're going to be seen. We're going to be truly seen here. And so it is a place that because that's can be quite vulnerable, especially if you've had trauma. I think especially if you've had trauma, you are going to have some patterns in your life that keep running that are triggered in certain situations. And intimate relationships are the places where they're going to be most triggered. But hey, brilliant. Because if you both have a consciousness about that and a desire to move through and to grow, it means it can be an amazing space to actually look at what comes up and be able to deal with it in relationship with the other together. But if I think the other reason that it can be challenging is that we get into relationship because we have a need that we want met. And if we have certain patterns of behavior, certain traumas running, certain beliefs, conditioning that we are driven by, we can attract somebody who may be perfectly right for where we are in that moment, but is going to be there to challenge. It's going to be there to challenge. I do believe, I have an absolute, I feel grounded belief that we attract whatever is right for us in that moment. You know, so when I was sort of in my early life, I attracted people who were rock solid because that's what I needed. And yet I wanted connection, you know, what I really desired. So I needed rock solid, but I really desired connection. And so I kept finding myself in these relationships that had this tension. They were rock solid, but where was the connection? But I needed rock solid. And now I feel rock solid. I don't need that. I'm actually really looking and finding. I mean, I find that my relationships with my friends has deepened tenfold in the last sort of 5 years. You know, I'm more vulnerable. I ask for help. I'm more open about when I'm, you know, down. I talk to people. I talk about it. And that's because I feel safer in myself. So to come back to what's challenging, it's to do with, I think, how safe you feel within yourself, how much acceptance you have in yourself, how easy it is to discuss the things that need or can be discussed in order to process what's going on for you in the relationship with that other person. And of course, that depends on how conscious you both are, how evolved is a bit of a, I don't mean any judgment on it, but where you are in your journey of sort of understanding yourself and others and the world, you know, how connected you are. So I think there are lots of different levels on which it works, and it can be challenging, and that can be amazing for both parties if it's used in the right way, in a conscious way.
It's funny you say it's challenging, because this morning I was with a client and he was talking about challenges, and I said, your challenges are what helps you grow.
Yeah.
And when we run away from challenges, we don't grow. So if we bring it back to the question of the presence and the owning of our shit, where do we start, Sharon?
So I think it's really important to, you know, somebody said to me about parenting, and I've got a friend who does this, and it's brilliant. She said, she's got 3 neurodiverse kids out of 4, right? and I see her and I go, I think you're just incredible. And you know, what do you do? How do you do it? And she said, I meet them where they're at.
Mm.
I meet them where they're at. And I think this meeting actually is really key. It's like meeting yourself where you're at and meeting the other where they're at. So there's a way of discerning how deep you can go. And as coaches, or you and I, I think you build this absolutely innate sense of where to start with a client and how deep to go with the client, because you're discerning where they are and what not even, I wouldn't even say what they're capable of, but just where they are, and then where they can go, where they want to go. So I think that's the first thing. It's because if you have a very conscious person with somebody who hasn't sort of done that work and isn't quite so conscious, there's no point in going in with, okay, everything is, just be with what is. Because it's like, what the hell is that? So I think, the first thing I think is to sort of really, really deeply realize and understand that we are all human beings on this journey. With our own shit, we're all unique, and that you can't change anyone else. You cannot ever change anyone else. You can actually, do you know what? I had a little revelation about sort of 6 or 7 months ago, and I suddenly thought, oh, actually, I don't want to change who I am. And I can't. No. Hooray. But what you can change is the perspective you have to who you are, and to who somebody else is, and importantly, what they're doing. Because when I'm doing leadership, when I'm in my leadership coaching, I often talk about positive regard. A positive regard is a key coaching concept of anyone who knows about coaching. But it's when you see the person, the human in front of you as a pure human being. And as we are in our pure humanness, there can never be anything wrong with us. We are just who we are. But you can, so you don't judge the human. We do, but we're aware of our judgment. So we do naturally, as human beings, evaluate what's going on and evaluate somebody else and evaluate ourselves. We're always doing it. Are we not?
All the time. But then it's about becoming conscious of the fact that we're doing that. And
exactly.
Exactly.
Yeah. So actually that illustrates what I'm talking about. It's like, we judge, we're human, we're going to do that. So it's being aware of what you're bringing into this situation, this relationship, this environment, whatever, what you're bringing. And if you're bringing judgment, then this is what the owning your own shit is largely about. It's knowing what judgment you are bringing. So being aware of and conscious of what judgment you're bringing, both about the other and also about yourself, because we're carrying our story about who we think we are, what we think we should do and say, and what we think the other should do and say. So the owning your shit is really sort of doing that work and being conscious of what is going on here with me and with you, and really sort of being in that space. And the presence is the ability to be with that, to meet it, where it is at, where the other is at, where you are at, to really sort of be with what is here. So I don't know if you know Byron Katie. I don't know if anyone knows Byron Katie. She is, so she is, I love the way she comes to this, because she says, she says, if, I can't quite remember exactly what she says, but if you are resisting reality, you'll lose, okay, but only 100% of the time. Which I absolutely love, because it's true. And you know, in the sort of awakened circles, enlightened circles, some people say, you know, if you think, which we do because we're human, that something shouldn't be as it is, it's like you're fighting a losing battle as soon as that comes out, because it's already happened. What is here right now has already happened. So whether it should or shouldn't happen is completely and utterly irrelevant. Yeah.
Yes.
Because it's already the case. It's already what is happening here. So the presence part is about being with what is here in you know, in a way that you are really present to what is here, that this is here. So, and sometimes when I sort of talk about this, clients go, well, but that feels like I've got to just roll over and accept everything and just, like, you know, that's not good. It's like, well, then am I not going to do anything about it? But it's not about that at all. It's about when you really accept what is here in this moment, it means you can see it for the reality that it is.
Mm-hmm. And
that seeing of the reality in that moment influences what you can do next.
Because that's the thing, isn't it?
Yeah, you're seeing how it is. And that means the decisions, you know, choiceless choices maybe, but whatever you do or say or be, act, think after that come from a completely different place to if you were in your judging human and just thinking that that is true, you know. So there we go, I'll shut up.
But I think it's really important that we make that distinction between thinking about what should have happened or shouldn't have happened and the fact that it has happened. And it's like, what do we do next?
Yeah.
And then the whole thing about owning your shit is that this is what my contribution was to what just happened, and not blaming it on your other half.
What can I say a little bit about that, Charlotte? Because that is fantastic. Thank you. Because now there is a model which I'd love to share. I haven't been organized enough to have it on hand, but if anyone wants to, I'm really happy to share it afterwards. Which is about how, so I will describe it. So there's a model that sort of says, okay, so you're in a position of being a victim, let's say, okay, and you feel that things are happening to you. It's like, oh, you know, I've just lost my job. This is awful. They shouldn't have done it. My boss was shit. I'm never going to get another one. What am I going to, you know, it's like you're in victim mode. You're allowing things to have an effect on you. Brilliant. Great. We all do that. It's human. There's nothing wrong with that at all. But what can happen is that you recognize that that's where you are. And then if you really take full responsibility, because if you have lost your job or you're separating from your partner, for instance, it's then looking at it from a position of absolute reality. So if you look at it in presence, you can see that maybe it wasn't the right job for me anyway. You know, my son lost his job recently, and we worked out that it was just that there was a certain part of it that he's got a neurodiverse brain that didn't come to him. It just wasn't natural to him. And he would have to work so hard to be able to do that. So it just wasn't the right job, just not the right job, you know? So it's like looking at it from that place of, okay, let's take responsibility for that. So that really is the key, is taking responsibility and owning it, owning your part in it, owning another part in it. Maybe you took the job because it was, you know, it was a lot of money, or maybe you were with that partner because they seemed really strong and like a rock, but they weren't giving other things that you needed. So it's just really seeing it from that point of view. And then if you do take responsibility for that and see it in that way, and see how you're making yourself a victim, that you are creating that, which takes a lot of humility, self-awareness, honesty, courage, curiosity. You know, it takes a lot of stuff to do that, but it is possible, because that's, you know, how we work, Sorrel. That's what we do. when you do that, you can move into a place from to me to by me. So the to me is creator, the by me, no, sorry, the to me is victim, the by me is creator. You know, when you know that you are creating this and you have responsibility, you move into a completely different space, because you know that you can change this. You know, you have the agency and you take responsibility, you see things as they are, and you then see, okay, so what can I do about it? If that relationship wasn't right for me, because it actually in the end I shifted and I wasn't now getting what I needed, because I need connection. I did need stability, and now I need connection. And so actually it's right for that to go. It's right for that to be let go. However painful it feels to lose or to move or to shift. And I might be single, and that might be a bit shit for a bit, you know, as it was when I split up with my partner. I thought, this is great. I'm gonna do this. People are gonna be coming in my house all the time, and I'm gonna, you know, it was shit. It was shit. Of course it was shit, because there was a lot of change going on, and my system wasn't ready for that, you know. But it was the way that I thought about it, it was shit before, but it was sort of unauthentic shit in the relationship. There were things going on that were not right. We weren't honest. We were lying really to our son, you know, in a way, because we're saying, this is all great, it's all great. It wasn't all great, you know, and actually he saw it, he knew. So it went from that shit to actually, this is shit, but this is at least true shit. It's at least true shit that I'm dealing with here, that's coming up for me, and I'm seeing it.
I like that distinction between non-authentic shit and the true shit. And it's a process that we all have to go through multiple times in our lives. I mean, the end of a relationship, losing somebody through a bereavement, losing a job.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And it's that ability to recognize that, yeah, it's shit, but I'm okay with that, because it's just part of being human. And if I didn't feel shit, there'd be something wrong with me.
1000%. And it's so that, oh my God. So that is, but it's when we're resisting that shit, that's what causes the pain, because we're resisting it. So when we accept that place, that, okay, this is shit, but it's true shit, that gives you the opportunity to move through it, to understand, to see, to learn about yourself, to grow, to sort of, okay, so, you know, to actually even distinguish and discern what is going on here, and therefore what you need to do about it. Because, you know, it is about what you do in a conscious way. And I'm just going to say one more thing about presence. I think that what happens when you develop your presence and your ability to be here, which is a process, you know, that you go through, you then come from a completely different place. So when you're identified with your mind and your conditioning and everything, that's sort of the beliefs that you've built up your story, you are operating from your mind and your emotions, actually, because your emotions are conditioned too. They're closer to your truth, but they're still conditioned. That's where you're operating from. And when you shift your mode of living, and this gets me so excited, when you shift your mode of being by going through that shit, taking responsibility, you know, really working on your ability to be here, present in your body, see what's going on, your sensations, be here, then you get the opportunity to go from believing that this is what you are and this is your life, to really, and I feel it from my gut, some people feel it from their heart, you get an opportunity to move from a completely different sense, you know, of life and living. And it's just, that's when things just start happening to you. And I feel myself getting really woohoo, tingling here, because it's that life force, which is just a wonderful place to move from.
You know what suddenly occurs to me as you said that is that when we're living from this conditioned Storyville, really, isn't it?
Story.
We're kind of damning the life force because we're not giving it a channel to move through, which is true. But when we start to live from who we really truly are, that opens out. And then you get that. I always start thinking about daffodils when I think about life force. It's bizarre. But you get that opening out that allows the growth and the flourishing, which you just don't get when you're stuck up in your Storyville.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And the other thing is, I think somebody I was listening to recently, can't get his name, but if anyone's really interested, I can. He was sort of saying, well, you naturally grow. It's like a triangle. So you naturally, and I think, you know, we're born as in our pure essence, aren't we? I mean, we're like, wow, this is the world. Wow. You know, we don't have any concepts about labels, about whatever anything is. We're not separating out anything because we don't know that that's a table and that's a chair and that's a person. It's just like, whoa, this is all sort of just happening. And then as we grow, we pick up beliefs and thoughts and ways of being and ways of acting and behaving and staying safe and making sure I'm secure and all of that. So we pick up all that conditioning, all those beliefs and experiences. And it's a bit like other people in your life say, hey, here's a nice bit of clothing, put that on. And we go, oh, okay, I'll wear that. And then I'll wear that. And then I'll wear that. And I'll wear this and I'll wear that. You know, so we grow and we actually, I did a wonderful exercise once with somebody who made us do this sort of as an experience. It was just great. We ended up looking ridiculous. But it's like, yeah, you put all these things on.
Yes.
And then you end up with this story that is actually not yours. And that's the process, I think, of really unpicking that and seeing, well, what is my story, that conditioning, and what is truly me? What are my preferences, my tendencies, you know, my true, and I think there's a triangle. So you have a conditioning, and then you start coming out of that, if you're lucky enough to look at, well, really, who am I? And then there can be a flip-flopping between those two places. And then the last bit of the triangle is actually understanding that both of those things are actually who you are and are part of the whole thing. And you have then this sort of wholeness of living in a, you know, in an aware space where both of those things can be really present. So you can be present with your conditioning and the fears and everything that come up, and you can go, thank you, hello, hi fear that says I can't do this, or oh my god, I'm going to be seen, or you know, I can't ask for what my needs are in this relationship, you know, hello to that, hello. And then the perspective that you have on that is different. It's like it's not driving you. That's the key distinction.
It's more like a companion.
More like a companion and information. It's information, but it doesn't have to dictate then what you do. You don't have to run away if you're not getting your needs met in that moment because you haven't asked for them.
Yes.
Because you haven't voiced them. You know, you don't have to run.
And the fact that you haven't asked for them is probably a reflection of that conditioning, which is that, oh, I can't ask for what I need. That's selfish.
Yes, exactly. It would be selfish, or I'm never going to get it, or I'm going to be seen as weak, or I'm going to be seen as needy, or, you know, all of those things.
Yeah.
Or I'm going to be seen as sort of like so many people say to me, oh, I'm too much. I'm too much. I'm too much. It's because there's this sense of bigness here. And at some point the message has come, you're too much, damp it down, you can't be that, you know. And that's a parental voice of like, I can't deal with you being big, I can't deal with your big emotions, I can't deal with your running off and wanting to do all these scary things, you know. So no, damp it down, keep it safe for me, as a, you know. And I'm talking about as a parent might say, you have to keep it safe for me, so damp yourself down.
And the earlier you get that message, the harder it is to notice that where it came from.
Yeah. exactly. And if you have, I mean, we all get those messages. I think nearly everyone does. But if you have something, the sort of the trauma, coming back to trauma,
yeah,
then it can be, and I don't, but I'd love to hear your definition of trauma, Sorrel, because my sort of thinking about it is that it's a position that doesn't, I don't know, that doesn't feel healthy for you, that then just isn't processed in, you know, in later life, that it's not processed. It's sort of it's so deep, or it's so painful that it's not processed. So it goes on and on and
yeah,
on.
I definitely agree on that. And
I'd love to hear your.
Well, the other thing I think about it is that certain things happen in our lives and we simply don't have the resources to cope with them.
Mhm.
And I would say about, you know, I had boarding school for 7 years and then my boyfriend took his life. And had I not been to boarding school for 7 years, maybe I'd have coped a lot better with that than I did. So I wasn't adequately resourced to cope with that. For other people, it might not have been such a, I mean, it's quite a big deal if someone takes their life, but, you know, it would be different and it would resolve more quickly.
Yeah.
And so, as Gabor Mate says, the trauma is not in the event, it's in the way we responded to and processed the event and the meaning we made of it and what we think it says about us.
Yes.
And all of those sorts of things.
Yeah.
Because clearly something that happened, you know, 20, 30, 40, 50 years ago is not responsible for how I feel now. It can't be, can it? Any more than something might happen 10 years' time.
Yeah. In reality, it can't be, but very often,
But it's
you know,
because the way we've held it in here.
it drives it. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
That's
so
lovely.
I don't tend to think this is trauma and that isn't trauma. Because we can get stuck into all these awful debates about, oh, I don't think that was really trauma. I've been in those trauma top trumps positions with other people, and I'm thinking,
Yeah.
my trauma was big enough to count.
Yeah. Yeah,
It's just
absolutely.
not helpful. So
Yeah.
it's
And I just want to pick up on something you said there, which I think is really key. It's what we make it mean about us, about who we are,
yeah,
you know. So somebody says, right, I don't want to be with you anymore, I'm going to go, right? And the pain in that is what we make it mean about us.
yeah,
It's like, oh, I'm wrong, I'm bad, there's something wrong with
yeah,
me
absolutely.
because they didn't want to stay with me, so there's something wrong. But you know, it's actually, when you really look at it, there are going to be all sorts of things going on there.
Yeah, mostly to do with, well, at least half to do with them, and probably
Yeah,
also.
yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Yeah,
We can come up with all sorts of reasons to feel bad, like, oh, so what did I do wrong? Why did I pick this person in the first place? Or why could I not hold it together? And all of these sorts of things, but they're unhelpful stories.
yeah, absolutely. A friend of mine said, sort of friend, I mean, who knows what goes on in relationships, you know, it's all sort of like very intimate and what goes on behind the scenes. But a friend who's sort of whose girlfriend, well, you know, sort of seems to be moving away and making very independent life for herself, you know, away. And he said, I don't know why I can't be loving and support. Why can't I be loving and supportive in this? You know, and I was like, well, you can't be loving and supporting this because there's something in your system that makes you want to be sick when this is happening. You know, so these two things here, you know, there's what's going on in your body and is going, do you know what, there's something here that is like, feels wrong that this is happening. And the other part of you, which is the conscious, you know, like, you know, sort of saying, oh, rational side saying, oh, I should be loving and supportive when she's just doing what she wants to do. But actually there's something else going on there. You know, what else is actually going on here? Because actually you want a life with your partner in your life, sharing a home, sharing a life, having a life together. And actually she might want something else and she may not be being honest about that. But you are, you know, there's something here that thinks you should really be supportive. But what's the truth?
And it
What's
sounds
the
like
truth?
it's like you want one thing, but you can't do it because your system won't allow you to do it.
Yeah, yeah, Yeah. And then sometimes your system will just act in a way that sabotages something anyway.
Oh, wow.
And I think but just to sort of talk about that as well, I mean, actually, I don't really believe in self-sabotage. I think it's about self-preservation,
Yeah.
actually. It's more self-preservation than self-sabotage, because it's our system wanting to keep us safe.
Yeah.
However we are, you know, I do believe there's that sort of push, and seeing it in that light can make you more, can enable you to be more compassionate about what is going on.
Yeah, I would say that's something that we haven't talked about much, is about compassionate towards ourselves and towards the other, whoever it is we're talking about. And recognizing that the so-called self-sabotage is something that a kind of innate wisdom has done for you to keep you safe, even though maybe it kind of got the parameters a bit wrong.
Yeah, even though it might have stopped a healthy relationship sort of happening because you were too scared. But in that moment, I think it comes back to sort of like, it's meet yourself and the other where you're at. In that moment, you were too scared, you know, and I've had that. I chose relationships that were rocks, and I had little dalliances when I was much younger, you know, 20 years ago. I had dalliances with people who I was connected with, but I was too scared. At that point, I was way too scared to actually be in that connection, because I didn't have, like you said, I didn't have the resources to know how to show up in that way.
And we kind of choose the relationships that, well, I think you said this at the very beginning, we choose the relationships that we need. We do meet ourselves where we are very often by choosing the person who will meet that need as it is at the moment, but we grow, and then we grow out of that need, and we haven't. Someone's just come into the waiting room, excuse me a moment. Admit. So we grow, but then the other person doesn't understand, why does this person not love me anymore, doesn't want to be with me anymore. You've grown and they haven't, or they haven't changed.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know what, it reminds me of a client I've worked with recently on his relationship, because they were in conflict, you know, and it was because of this thing which we have as human beings, that you want to be right. So he wanted to be right. You know,
yes,
he wanted to be right. So and he was moving on, you know, they had it, you know, and he was moving on, and she was in a different position. So she was sort of stuck in, she'd been depressed, and she hadn't quite got herself out of that. So she was, you know, she was in a different place. Now he was wanting back that connection that they used to have, not really accepting where she was, and he wanted to be right. It was like this defensive position. And this is coming back to that model of victim and creator, and we worked with that. And he got to a point where he was seeing exactly what he was doing and took responsibility for it, so could then turn up in those situations which were triggering him, because it was like, you know, because it was actually triggering him, his desire to be needed and wanted, and she's fighting against it because she doesn't feel that she's got the ability to deal with things, doesn't want to be seen, so basically what was happening was that she didn't want to be seen to be weak. He felt like disconnected, that she didn't want him anymore, so she's pushing away, he's pushing away, so they're both getting further away. As soon as he realized that there was this dance going on, and he accepted that he actually, you know, his need to be right, his need to be loved and wanted, all of that, and where she was, and he saw her where she was, the dynamics completely changed naturally, because he was turning up and he wasn't judging her in the way that he did. He was seeing this, you know, this human being. And so she came towards him more. So there was less conflict. There's then the opportunity to open up within this space of, oh, actually, this is what I want to say, energetic connection.
Yes.
Within this space between two people, you know, so they're both being defensive. One person sort of sees it for what it is and goes, okay, I'm going to be softer here. I'm going to be softer. And then that gives her the opportunity to look at what she's doing and to see him in a different light. And then she can come towards a little bit, and then they can start, you know, changing the dynamic. They can then start changing the dynamic because they're not stuck in their sides anymore.
And it almost sounds like it's a system, isn't it? It's like we said at the beginning, well, before everybody came into the room, we talk about a dance. That is two people who create the dance, and the dance only is there when you're dancing. And you make one adjustment in that dance, and the whole system changes.
Yeah.
It has to. Because if I've just stepped into your space, you're going to back off. If I've backed off, you've got... And it just sounds almost as if it was partly conscious, because he was clearly consciously changing his behaviour. But some of it was just the fact that it's a system. It's going to rearrange itself as one person changes, and then the other person's going to change anyway.
Yeah, exactly. Can I just share something? So I learned recently about kinetic, energetic connection, which I sort of knew anyway, but I didn't know it had a word, you know. And that is that we have about a 0.5 meter, you know, so 50 centimeters. We project our sort of energy, how we are, you know, and that's like what's it, emotional contagion. So if you are sort of feeling really angry, somebody else is going to feel it. They're going to really feel it. And in that sort of meter between you is where it's sort of in that mix, you know, it's going to happen there, right? And I just want to share with you something quite funny. So I was I'm an artist as well, and I did this bit of interventional art. So we went out as a group into the crowds, and we did this one thing which I just thought was hilarious. There's also, as human beings, there's a very similar, weirdly, 0.5 meter that we want around us to feel safe. And if somebody encroaches on your space, you're going to back away. So we did this thing where we would go up to somebody and ask them the time, and we'd be here, encroach on that space, and that person would back away. And then I'd keep going forward, they'd keep backing away. And like, you know, this little dance where I'm following them, they're moving back, you know, and it's just a completely unconscious thing because we want to protect that space, you know. So it is a very it's something we're not usually aware of, but it's a very real space there that we are dealing with when we're interacting with somebody else, relating to somebody else.
And we notice it in lifts.
I mean, yes, because if everybody's like slammed up against each other, everyone just stands completely still, don't they? Usually, unless you're a bit of an interventionist artist like me who goes.
So Sharon, I'm realizing that we're kind of 45 minutes in, and I know people are going to have some questions, and we were going to actually offer, or you were going to offer some kind of like things that people can do in relation to relationships.
Absolutely. So I would say the first thing is really is awareness. Okay, the first thing is always awareness. So looking at what is going on here, what are you doing? Actually, not the other person, first of all, leave the other person completely out of it. But what am I doing here? You know, what beliefs do I have? What am I thinking about this situation? How am I responding or reacting in this situation? You know, what am I bringing to it emotionally? So that awareness of really sitting down and thinking, okay, so what is going on here with me? And by doing that, you cut down the resistance to it. You're just, you know, you're opening up your opportunity to go, okay, I can see that this is happening. And so there's an acceptance there. So there is a little bit of a process here. So there's an acceptance there. This is what I'm doing. So, you know, that takes courage. Come with it without as much judgment as you can, or being aware of the judgment that you have, and curiosity. So the one word I often give to people, or two words actually, curiosity and compassion.
Yeah.
So come to this to yourself first. You don't even think of the other person. They're just doing what they do, and you know, come to yourself first, look at what you're doing with curiosity and compassion. And then, if you're able, you can share that with the other person. You know, you can share that. Now, that is a really courageous act to do that. And a lot of people find that really hard, but it's just like one little thing. And there's another wonderful phrase which comes from nonviolent communication, which is a whole sort of thing, which is great. It's like, when you do this, I feel this.
Yeah.
So you're not blaming anyone, you're sort of taking responsibility, but you're saying, you know, when you do this, I feel this. And then what I would love to happen is this. So then you're asking for what you need. So when you do this, I feel this. And what I would like is this. So the other thing I think is really becoming much more aware of what you need in a relationship, what your needs are, and then asking for what you need. I mean, it took me ages and ages to learn that. I probably only really learned it last year, actually.
It goes so much against the grain, doesn't it, for most of us? But in that process, you are owning your emotions. They're my emotions. They're not caused by you. Okay. Exactly. So before we move on to the question and answer, Sharon and I, we both have something to offer you. Basically, you're both offering a free discovery call.
Yes. So I'm just going to putting in the chat a link that you can book a discovery call with me, which is an hour, and I'm very generous with this. There's no sort of I should probably be a bit of a better saleswoman, but I'm not. But yeah, it's just do you can book a call, and I do work with men as well as women. Actually, I work with female entrepreneurs quite often, but I do work with men as well. So the person I was working with in a relationship was a founder.
It hasn't gone into the chat. Did you put it in the chat?
I haven't pressed send, actually. Oh no, I'm sending it to Gavin as a hang on meeting coach.
Right.
It's all right. It's just me and tech. There we go. There it is.
There you go. So that's Sharon's link.
So do book, and I'm very happy to sort of, to have a chat and to sort of see where you are and what might help you. And if that, if that is working together, then it is. And if it's not, then I know loads of other people that I can recommend, or other things and resources that I can point you to. So very happy to do that.
I do pretty much the same as what Sharon does, in terms of I offer a free 1 hour call to find out what your challenges are, what you want to achieve, how you might get there, and if I think I can help you, I will tell you. And that's my link. So right, shall we move on to question and answer?
Yeah, let's do that.
Yes. Anyone who has a question, please unmute yourself. Oh, Natalie's got a hand up. Brilliant, Natalie, unmute yourself. Oh, actually, before we do that, I need to stop recording, so bear with me for a moment. It looks like I never pressed record in the first place. Oh no. Right, okay, I'm going to stop streaming.